As if things couldn't get any worse for Kanye West after another accusation of anti-Semitism, we have yet another lawsuit against the embattled rapper, this time from an apparent former Jewish employee who claims she was subjected to the most vile rhetoric and was fired for speaking up. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Kanye West certainly making headlines in all the wrong ways, and now he is facing yet another lawsuit. And that is what we're going to talk about right now. So we have this 34-page complaint. The suit was filed in the Superior Court of California. It's a state case. This unidentified Jane Doe, she's proceeding under a pseudonym, is suing Kanye West, his company Yeezy LLC, and others, and I'll get to who those people are, for multiple claims, multiple causes of action: discrimination, hostile work environment, retaliation, failure to prevent these things from happening, breach of contract, and a lot more. There are 12 causes of action. I'm actually going to break those down a little bit later, but I want to start at the beginning of this lawsuit, and this is quite the lawsuit. So actually, at the very, very, very beginning, there is a footnote that says that this plaintiff is pursuing this case, filing the complaint, under a pseudonym under California law to protect her confidentiality and her privacy, and they cite case law in support of that. I will say, though, as we have seen from recent cases in Sean Combs' case, right, he's facing a number of different lawsuits where a lot of people have been filing sexual assault lawsuits against him under pseudonyms, Jane Does, John Does. This is not a guarantee. In other words, a court can look at this and say, you know what, plaintiff, you haven't established enough of a reason with supporting evidence why revealing your identity would harm you, and that a defendant has a right to investigate and challenge the assertions of a plaintiff. After all, she filed the lawsuit. She was the one who put it out there. So we shall see as this case progresses if she is allowed to continue as a Jane Doe. But let's get more into this. Now let's get into the lawsuit. So Jane Doe, who is identified in this complaint as a Jewish woman, and that becomes very important, claims that she was hired as a marketing specialist for both Yeezy and Kanye West in December of 2023. And she said within just 2 weeks of her coming on board, that's when Kanye West apologized on Instagram to the Jewish community for, you remember, the series of apparent anti-Semitic remarks he had made in the public. You remember something like this: I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And the funny thing is, I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jews. Also, you guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda. You remember that stuff? Well, that got him locked out of his account on X, formerly known as Twitter. But the apology on Instagram, I'm going to be using quotation marks as we'll get into what he said later on. The apology on Instagram was written in Hebrew and read, "I sincerely apologize to the Jewish community for my unplanned outburst caused by my words or actions. It was not my intention to hurt or disrespect, and I deeply regret any pain I may have caused. I am committed to starting with myself and learning from this experience to ensure greater sensitivity and understanding in the future. Your forgiveness is important to me, and I am committed to making amends and promoting unity." However, Jane Doe makes the point in this complaint, quote, "Sadly, this apology was short-lived," because the complaint reads that she was doing a great job in her position, that she was landing Kanye West business opportunities, that she was diligent, that she performed her duties in an exemplary manner, that she was even promoted with a raise at one point. By the way, all very important when we talk about a wrongful termination claim, because the counterargument from the employer is, we didn't fire that person as a form of retaliation or discrimination, but because they weren't good at their job. But anyway, she says her claim is she was doing a great job despite, quote, "an increasingly sexist, anti-Semitic, and ethically repugnant environment," and that Ye rewarded plaintiff with the same anti-Semitic vitriol he recently condemned to the public. But in private, his hate went deeper. Ye carried out a calculated campaign to threaten and psychologically torment Jewish people around him, specifically plaintiff. On numerous occasions, Ye reminded Doe of his anti-Semitism by comparing himself to Hitler, hailing Hitler, and directly threatening plaintiff on account of her Jewish heritage. Hey, let me just take a quick sidebar from Sidebar for a minute, because I don't know if you guys know this, but we have an incredible offer that's happening right now. So you know how Morgan & Morgan is our sponsor and our partner? Well, they are also the official law firm partner of the UFC, which makes total sense, by the way, because fighting is in their DNA, like the UFC fighters who bring their everything to the octagon. Morgan & Morgan's 1,000 attorneys bring their everything for their clients in courtrooms across America. And get this, right now, Morgan & Morgan is giving away 2 tickets to the Pereira versus Ankalaev fight in Las Vegas, plus $2,000. So you can enter for your chance to win at morganufc.com or click the link in the description and also pinned in the comments. So according to Jane Doe, in or around January 2024, so this would be right after she started work, she explains how West's new album, Vultures Volume 1, was met with a lot of blowback because the cover art appeared to resemble a Nazi aesthetic. So Jane Doe claims she told a coworker, hey, maybe West should, issue a statement condemning any ties to Nazism. So this person allegedly did say this to Kanye West and then sent Jane Doe a screenshot of what West purportedly wrote back. And you know what he purportedly wrote back? I am a Nazi. By the way, not only is that allegedly documented in a text message, talk about proof of a hostile work environment and a discrimination case, but I mean, what did West just post on X a few days ago in a bizarre online tirade? I'm a Nazi and I love Hitler. So that just made Jane Doe's claims arguably more credible, no? Now, Jane Doe claims that this made her feel endangered. That's a key word, endangered. We hear that in these types of employment cases as well. Now, before I get into the other allegedly harassing conduct, let me just stick with the claims of anti-Semitism for a moment, okay? Because you might be saying, well, maybe Kanye West didn't know that that message would get back to Jane Doe, right? It was screenshotted, sent to her. There's more to that. You see, Jane Doe claims that on June 4th, 2024, West had texted her and other Jewish people in a chat, what the F is everyone here getting paid? Now, one little caveat about that, there's no screenshot of that exact text message, at least I could find in the complaint. There is a screenshot of a text that says, what was blank redacted getting paid? Now, aside from that, if that is true, being totally inappropriate to write on a message from the employer about what people are getting paid, he allegedly follows that up with, welcome to the first day of working for Hitler. So yeah, that is apparently a message that was sent from Kanye West to Jane Doe directly. And so this not only appears to be documented in a message, not only is this allegedly comparing himself to the mass murder of 6 million Jews, but also writing working, acknowledging the employer-employee relationship, right? That's the argument. So I got to tell you, I'm pretty hard-pressed to find a more concrete piece of damning evidence in a case like this, but defense attorneys could say he didn't send it, it's not his phone, it was a mistake, it's part of the context, he didn't mean what he meant. I don't know. That, I'm not going to lie to you, that one feels like a tough one to get past. But moving forward, Jane Doe says that both she and another Jewish person, they were removed from the chat. Then she was apparently added back into the chat, only for Kanye West to allegedly write her, cut the BS and F out of here and F both of you, apparently referring to Jane Doe and the other Jewish person in this chat. Again, there are screenshots of these messages. And then Jane Doe claims that she shared these screenshots with her supervisor, who allegedly, and this is important, only wrote back copy and didn't do anything about it. That's important for later on. But apparently there is more. So in another group chat with Jane Doe and Kanye West's manager, he apparently writes or messages, you ugly as F, you ugly, and then makes more comments seemingly calling her corny and stupid, followed up by Hail Hitler, come and get me B-word, and later on, now sue me, you corny bleep word. Again, screenshots of all of this. There are also other alleged screenshots of messages where he apparently calls her a heartless sociopath, tells her to shut the F up, B. That is all arguably evidence of both discrimination based on her religion and gender. But there is more. And look, I'm sorry I got to get through this, but it is important to get all of this out there for purposes of this claim. I know it's pretty disgusting to hear, but In another screenshot message, she appears to write, "You what's left after I said DeathCon." Now that again is arguably in reference to West's tweet back in 2022 where he posted, "I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people." By the way, everything I just went through, that's pretty much all the alleged anti-Semitic stuff. There are more messages that make up this complaint. For instance, we haven't even talked about where Jane Doe claims how on January 10th, 2024, again, very shortly after she was hired, West allegedly texted her a picture of a naked woman and sent it to her and others in this group chat. Now, is there perhaps some creative, artistic context why he would send something like that? Well, she did highlight how at one point she was directed to assist Kanye West in a new pornography venture called Yeezy Porn, so perhaps there could be a defense to allegedly sending that photo. It's work-related, although the problem is that photo was apparently sent in January, and she wasn't tasked with this venture until April. Also, by the way, Jane Doe claims she morally opposes porn and she refused to work on that. Now, Jane Doe goes on to say how this job was just a roller coaster in other ways as well, because she claims that she was fired and rehired a few days later by Kanye West over an issue about creative control on a project, and that West's chief of staff allegedly advised her that West fires and rehires people all the time and she better get used to it. Now, on the defense's side, though, an incident like this where West allegedly texted plaintiff before her initial firing, "Don't present me nothing ever in life that I don't have creative control over." So Kanye West could make the argument, look, I fired her initially at that time for a business reason, for a legitimate purpose. And when she was finally terminated, that was also for a business decision, and that alone. However, that is not the way that Jane Doe sees this, so let's get now to her final termination. The complaint reads, on or around June 5th, 2024, the very day after reporting Ye's harassing conduct to manager, and just 4 hours after Ye's manager woke up in the morning and was made aware of text messages, Yeezy's then attorney terminated plaintiff with a termination letter in which management was CC'd, and it appears a copy or a part of a copy of that letter is embedded in the complaint as well. So you got a lot to process here. A lot, I know. But let me explain to you who she is suing and for what, and then we'll talk about this. So as I mentioned, she is not only suing Kanye West, but also Yeezy and all the underlying corporate entities, and 1 to 100 unnamed defendants who are in some way responsible for what happened. That's her argument. Basically, she seems to be saying that she has the right to amend this complaint and list these people out as defendants later on once she gathers more information. Anyway, the reason she is suing West, his company, and others is because she argues that they all, quote, compelled, coerced, aided, and or abetted the discrimination, retaliation, and harassment, that they either committed the alleged acts or they acted as agents or employees of the defendants in the commissions of these acts, that these were actions taken during the scope of employment in their work duties. That is how she's saying they're all on the hook. And as I mentioned, Jane Doe is suing under multiple causes of action. So let's go through those now. First up, we have discrimination on the basis of religion, national origin, and gender sex. So this is based on the Fair Employment and Housing Act. That is a law that applies to both public and private employers, and it prohibits discrimination on a protected category like religion, national origin, gender, sex. So here the argument is that those characteristics were a substantial reason for why she was fired. Second cause of action, we have hostile work environment harassment on the basis of religion, national origin, and gender and sex. Again, this law, FEHA, comes into effect because it also prohibits harassment on the basis of protected categories or characteristics. And needless to say, you can understand that all of the alleged text messages I mentioned before, all those communications, they would go towards that. But this part's actually interesting because Jane Doe explains that a single incident of harassing conduct, that is enough to create a hostile work environment. And that is true. If it is severe enough, that one instance could be sufficient for this claim to trigger. It has to really unreasonably interfere with Jane Doe's job or create an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. And the argument could be made, any one of those messages might have done that. Third, we have retaliation for engaging in protected activity. Again, FEHA comes into play here as well because it prohibits retaliating against an employee who makes a complaint about discrimination or harassment. Again, she claims when she spoke up about Kanye West's behavior, that is when she was fired. From there, we have another claim, failure to prevent discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. This is not against Kanye West, but it's against Yeezy and Doe's 1 through 100. The idea here is you failed to prevent Kanye West and others from engaging in intentional acts that resulted in Jane Doe being treated in a negative way due to her religion and gender, and because she spoke up and was retaliated against. Fifth, we have breach of an oral contract. So the idea here is that there was an oral agreement to pay Jane Doe a certain amount of wages, and then she was wrongfully terminated without cause, and that violated this contract. Sixth, we have negligent hiring, retention, and supervision. So the idea here is Yeezy, those John Does, you had a duty of care that you owed to Jane Doe as her employee to make sure to appoint, hire, retain, and supervise people, managers, employees, so that they wouldn't engage in discrimination or harassment or retaliation. And that duty was breached. 7, wrongful termination. So Jane Doe's firing, allegedly because of her protected status, religion, gender, and her protected activity, complaining about workplace misconduct, that violated various public policies that are protected under the law. 8, we have whistleblower retaliation. This is actually about violations of the labor code, which prohibits retaliating against an employee who complains about illegal activity. 9, retaliation for reporting working conditions, also the labor code, very similar to the 8th one. Basically, an employer can't order an employee to not disclose what the working conditions are like. Obviously, that would be illegal. 10, we have intentional infliction of emotional distress. So this is against all of the defendants. And the idea here is that what Jane Doe alleges that she experienced was, quote, extreme and outrageous conduct that caused her severe emotional distress. And moreover, that the defendants allegedly knew doing all this stuff could result in her suffering emotional distress. 11, we have violation of the Ralph Act. So this is a specific law that says generally people have a right to not be subjected to violence or threats of violence due to their religion or their gender or other protected characteristics. So here, all those alleged statements from Kanye West, all the arguably anti-Semitic and hateful comments are what trigger this specific cause of action. And finally, the last cause of action, number 12, we have discrimination in violation of the Tom Bain Civil Rights Act. So this law allows somebody the ability to sue another person who interferes by threat, intimidation, or coercion that person's exercise of their constitutional rights. So here the allegation is that what the defendants did denied Jane Doe full and equal advantages and privileges under the law because of her religion or gender or national origin or sex. Okay, now what is she looking for? Well, in terms of damages, Jane Doe is looking for a lot. First, we have economic damages. So we're talking lost past, future income, employment benefits, damage to her career, lost wages, overtime, unpaid expenses, penalties, as well as interest on unpaid wages. She's looking for non-economic damages, so that's in the form of compensating her for alleged psychological and emotional distress, humiliation, pain, and anguish. By the way, usually that is proven through a plaintiff's own testimony or that of mental health professionals or family about what she went through. She is also looking for punitive damages, which are a way to punish the defendants for what she lists out as oppressive, fraudulent conduct, or that done with malice. So we're talking really intentional, willful, harmful, wrong acts. I mean, malice is apparently defined under California law in part as acting with the intent to cause injury to a plaintiff and or acted with reckless disregard for plaintiff's injury. So here, that would be by allegedly terminating Jane Doe's employment and or taking other adverse job actions against her because of her gender or her ethnicity and so forth. And Jane Doe's complaint also explains that an alternative theory is that defendants acted with oppression and that they were acts done because of her gender or ancestry, and they were despicable, and they subjected her to cruel and unjust hardship in knowing disregard of her rights to a workplace free of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, abuse, and wrongful termination. Fraud. So the idea here is that in addition and or alternatively, Defendants' conduct, as alleged, was fraudulent, including that defendants asserted false pretextual grounds for terminating plaintiff's employment and/or other adverse job actions, thereby to cause plaintiff hardship and deprive her of legal rights. And she's also suing for attorney's fees and other relief, but those damages are the really key ones here. Now, I want to finish this lawsuit by highlighting a really important section from this complaint. It reads, "It has been reported that in June of 2025, Ye plans to release a new album titled Bully. Whether irony or self-reflection guides the name, there can be little doubt that Ye treats those around him, especially Jewish people and women, much worse than just a bully. He is a self-proclaimed Nazi, a person who has openly called himself Hitler, a boss who called his female employee a bee and ugly. He is a bully with tens of millions of followers on social media, with children and adults who watch and listen to him. He is a bully who is still able to run nationwide commercials on major platforms, appear at respected award shows, and galvanize his fan base. He uses his social media platforms to bully anyone who disagrees with him, spew hate speech only to disingenuously apologize for it repeatedly when he wants to promote his music, concerts, or merchandise. While some of the public has appeared to forgive Ye's behavior and thinly veiled 2023 apology, the evidence herein shows a bully who never really changed, a bully who must be held accountable." And remember, big context here, all of this lawsuit comes as Kanye West is already facing a lot of blowback in other lawsuits. He reportedly goes on a tirade on X a few days ago, seemingly praising Hitler, claimed that anti-Semitism was made up by Jewish people, that he would never apologize for his Jewish comments. That was a big one. Do I even have to mention, and we talked about this in a previous sidebar, that he was apparently selling at one point white t-shirts with a swastika logo on it? That's what he was selling at one point for, I believe, $20. That was the only thing up on the Yeezy site. And he also even allegedly directed his attention towards other subjects, like a post that said "Free Puff," seemingly or allegedly in reference to Sean Combs, who's locked up on federal sex trafficking, prostitution, and racketeering charges in New York as he awaits trial in May. And also, I mentioned litigation, Kanye West is facing other lawsuits. There was a lawsuit filed against Kanye West by Lauren Peixoto. She is suing him for wrongful termination and sexual harassment. And then she filed an amended complaint saying she was drugged and sexually assaulted at a party that was co-hosted by West and Sean Combs. Peixoto claims that after taking a few sips of a drink, she suddenly started to feel disoriented, began to slip into an altered and highly impaired state. She says she doesn't remember anything else, but woke up the next day feeling traumatized and disturbed. And she said it would be much, much later when West admitted to her that they did kind of hook up a little one time, interpreting that to mean that that night is when she was allegedly drugged and taken advantage of. And she told West that she didn't remember, and he reportedly laughed and said, "Women love to say they don't remember." Now, Peixoto also alleged that she was traveling with West to an album workshop in San Francisco back in 2021, and she says West pounded on her hotel room door at 6 a.m., forced his way into her room, claimed he had to use her shower because the one in his room wasn't working. And Peixoto claims that West later dropped his towel and attempted to forcefully thrust himself, his naked body, onto plaintiff's face and ignored her pleas to stop. So pretty distressing allegations there. And by the way, Kanye West recently, in this apparent rant online on X, he mentioned or seemingly mentioned Peixoto because he wrote on X, and this was reported by Hot New Hip Hop as well, that he never slept with Lauren Peixoto because, quote, she smelled funny, and claimed that half of the NBA can attest to that. And he even seemed to claim that she was trying to extort him by keeping receipts and that, quote, men are the real abuse victims. But he's also hit with other litigation too. So he is hit with litigation regarding his private Christian school, Donda Academy. For instance, you have an apparent former employee who accused Kanye West of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation as well, right? Similar to Jane Doe. But his claims were that Kanye West treated black staff like himself worse than white employees, screaming and berating them. But this plaintiff also alleged that West, quote, spew forth hate, professed anti-Semitic tropes and lies, and threatened the LGBTQ community, and even on one occasion almost sexually stimulated himself. So yeah, this Jane Doe lawsuit is not the first time that we've seen legal papers accusing Kanye West of anti-Semitism. And the allegations in this suit were also just insane, because the plaintiff here alleged that not only would West say or allegedly say this rhetoric in front of school children, but that he, quote, started to openly discuss how he only likes to date white women, and at one point told 2 school children, allegedly, that he wanted them to shave their heads and that he intended to put a jail in the school and that they could be locked up in cages. Now, that is not the only lawsuit he's facing with respect to Donda, because in fact, a judge in December entered a default judgment against Donda, meaning they automatically lose, in a suit that was filed by a former assistant principal of Donda, a man named Isaiah Meadows. He sued for wrongful termination, unpaid wages, for allegedly bringing up safety concerns about the school, and he claims he was subsequently fired for that. And a default judgment was reportedly entered because there seemed to be a failure on the part of the defendants to actually show up for this case. And by the way, let me also tell you, Kanye West's attorney actually was granted his request to be removed from this case because, according to him, Kanye West didn't speak to him or pay him. So a lot is going on with Kanye West right now. We will continue to monitor the latest legal developments, but that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.